It could be. That's better than some other pictures.
No. Not much.
Cool. Cool.
It's a good start.
Thank you.
I think we're pretty much ready to
Is he...
go. I got a thumbs up. I'll just wait 2 seconds. You might turn them. Might turn the background music off. Yeah. I'll turn the music off. Yeah. It's just humming away in the background there. Mm-hmm. Cool. All right.
Let's go.
Thanks everyone for joining us today at Wednesday Gallery for an artist talk with James Rhodes. I'd like to just firstly acknowledge that we're meeting on the lands of the Awabakal Warramai people, and I'd just like to extend my respect to elders past, present and emerging, for everyone here and anyone who might be watching on live stream today as well. I'm Wednesday Sutherland. I assist gallery director Justin Lee's running Wester Gallery. And I'm really excited today to talk to James Rhodes. This is his solo exhibition, Piss and Vinegar. It's a really fun body of work, and I'm really excited to talk more with James in front of you all and get to know a bit more about this body of work. But in case anyone's unfamiliar with James's practice, he is a very prolific early career photographic artist, visual artist who works predominantly with photo media. James has been very widely exhibited nationally. He's participated and been selected in quite a few art prizes. Most recently, Gosford Art Prize, as well as Waverley Art Prize, and currently in the Brenda Cloughton Memorial Travelling Scholarship Exhibition, which is still on at Maitland Regional Art Gallery until the...
I'm not going to give you a date because I can't remember, but it is still
until mid-June, I think.
Yeah.
So if you're around Maitland, definitely go in and check that out because it's an amazing show. So I thought that I'd just get started by asking James sort of the rationale behind this body of work. You may be quite familiar with this body of work, but it is quite, with James's prior work, but this is quite... it's quite a break in terms of medium and colour and tone. So I just wanted to talk a little bit about where that kind of came from.
Well, I mean, it started as a sort of like a real personal project where I'm revisiting 8 years, I think is the oldest negative, but 8 years worth of my archive. And it was all these images that I'd been quite attracted to, but had never been able to pull them together in any sort of way, conceptually, and had just like, I'd worked on projects throughout, and these are all images that had sat there and never were fully, put away. It was always an idea to use them at some point. And then I started thinking about the idea of memory, and the way that memory is quite... unreliable is probably the best word for it. And then I came across this idea that, when you remember something, you only remember the last time you remembered it, not the actual event. Mm. And then tying that into photography as like a catalyst to prompt a memory. And all the images that are in this show are either things that I had experienced and documented purely because I thought that was something worth remembering, or, I'm not going to tell you which is which, some of them are recreated memories from my childhood, which I just felt needed to be recorded so that I could go back and view them over time and not forget certain things. And that whole concept of memory is what sort of brought this quite... different and chaotic, and it's not like it's all landscape or it's all portraiture or it's all this or it's all that. It's all things that tie together to me quite personally, And it's the first time I've made a body of work that's this personal and quite revealing and quite vulnerable and quite freeing, because it was a body of work that I'm no longer thinking, oh God, let's get a strong concept together and then, explore that concept. It's like, no, let's get these images together and pull them together before the concept arises. But then, as you mentioned with color and whatnot too, I think when I was putting these together and when I was printing them, before I made them into like proper works and printing and bid, just printing them in the darkroom and looking at them as black and white images, my color palette previously was literally like one shade of green, one shade of blue, or two shades of blue, one shade of green, and one shade of brown. And I'd worked with that palette for 4 or 5 years.
And that palette was limited to the paint colours that...
It was limited to paint colours, but it was also all landscape work.
Yeah.
So it was sort of also limited to the landscapes that I was working with. And I just thought, well, if I'm just going, if I'm going kind of crazy with my archive negatives, like I'll just play with the colour and have no real... trying not to sort of take other people's opinions on board and just like purely just work like, no, this is an instinctual response to how I think the image should look.
Yeah.
And that's been really freeing for this body work.
Yeah. You're sort of working backwards in a way to what you might have done with previous bodies of work, conceptually?
Yes, to an extent, yeah, for sure. But I really wanted this to be like a personal project where it was like not even thinking about work I'd done in the past. Obviously using techniques and stuff that I've used in the past because, I mean, there's only so many techniques I know. So I've got to use them. But one of the other things that was really nice about it, and the reason I could use a lot more colour, was finding this printing process. So rather than just being able to, just having to colour silver gelatin prints, these are printed with a UV printer. So you can print on any material, and it instantly cures it. And what's brilliant about it too, because it's cured as a UV print, when you're using thinners and you're using other sort of oil paint mediums, it doesn't affect the print, and you can completely erase the color and the print stays. It's tough. Like I tried to destroy some of these, and it doesn't happen.
Yeah.
So it was quite nice to be able to not worry about the delicacy of the paper and just sort of go hard.
So changing your, not just the way that you were working with these images and the body of work, but changing the medium as well is sort of what's created something that is quite different to works that you've produced in the past.
I think exploring a new printing process definitely changed the way that they look. It also changed the scale because printing large scale in a darkroom is not easy.
No.
It's doable.
It's doable.
It's expensive and hard.
And the mistakes are expensive and hard.
Exactly. So that was another bit of freedom of being able to scale up, which I've wanted to do for a long time.
Yeah. No, it's exciting. It's been. I see a lot of your personality in these works. So when you talk about it being a really personal body of work, like. You do have quite an exuberant personality, and it is really reflected in how much fun you're having with the images as well, and like exploring your memories in this way is, I imagine, also it looks like it's been quite a fun process.
Yeah, it was one of the most enjoyable bodies of work to create, and at no point, I don't know for everyone else, but for me, like, there's this sort of ebb and flow of enjoying your work and hating your work, and enjoying it and hating it and putting it in a drawer and then pulling it out and, oh, maybe it's okay today, maybe it's not. But because this body of work was so tied to my memory and memory of these events, I wasn't even worried about how the works looked. It was more just like, do they feel like the memory I had? And so I didn't have as many, not that I had none, but I didn't have as many of those lows of like, I hate this, just get rid of it. Like, maybe it'll look okay on Monday.
Yeah. Oh, definitely. It's it can be such a. I think a lot of people, a lot of artists, it's something that we sort of don't talk about that much, is that love-hate relationship that you do have with the work that you're creating and with your own capabilities sometimes, for me personally. It's a very universal experience as an artist, I think.
Hopefully.
I would say so. And I think that's what is always motivating artists in creating new work as well. You kind of have to have that love-hate relationship with it to push yourself to be creating new things, or like in this example, sort of taking it into a totally new direction. But there's a sort of there's a bit of, as you said, vulnerability. You do have to make yourself really vulnerable as an artist in order to put yourself in that space to just create, fail way more times than maybe you succeed in terms of making the work. There's a lot of experimentation behind that as well. How do you would you like to talk us through maybe the process the differences in process in practical terms between creating prints in the darkroom, hand colouring them, and a bit more about how this process of UV printing works? I imagine it's a digital process, which is quite sort of different. So, maybe if you could speak about that.
So it's still a combination of analog and digital. I mean, they all come from negatives, and it's one of the reasons I love shooting to negative is that archive is there physically, and you can flick through it all the time. So the start of the process is the same. I still contact sheet the negatives. I still mark up the contact sheet, make initial prints, live with those prints in the studio on the wall, find the ones that settle and sit well. But then the main difference is, rather than taking it from that cheaper resin print to then a lovely fiber print that I can color, was then I would scan them and then produce them into this. So scan them.
Scan the print.
I scan the print, and then I would then modify it in Photoshop I would halftone it, because originally the idea was actually to screen print them.
Right. Okay.
But after testing that,
these images are created from scanned prints, not from the negative itself.
Half.
Okay.
Some of them are definitely scanned negatives, but a lot of them are just from scanned prints. But then, especially like the ones behind us where you've got these blocks of color, I'd be removing elements from the print, things that I thought weren't necessary to convey the memory. They still have to be there because you can't just remove them completely. But then to block them out. But so the real main difference between hand coloring a print and hand coloring these is just having a digital file to print onto the board rather than printing in the darkroom and hand coloring. But the paints I use are the same. The process I use is the same. In a way, really the only difference is that these have been printed directly onto wood or onto board rather than onto paper.
And then having another process of gluing and painting it.
Yes, exactly. And also being on board and being able to use thinner. Like if I make a mistake, I can just clear all the oil paint off and in a couple of days come back and colour it. Whereas with paper, it's not quite the same. You reprint it if you want to change it, sort of thing.
Yeah. Interesting.
So that also, that was also quite nice in the studio process. Is that one could sit on my working wall for weeks at a time, and I could colour it and wipe it and colour it and wipe it until everything sat right with me.
So you're spending a bit more time with the images
a lot more time,
the images as an image rather than sort of in a process-based way where you might be working a lot with one print in the darkroom, sort of trying to get that right.
Yeah. So the printing was a lot quicker, but living with them was a lot longer.
Interesting. With the painting aspect of these works as well, a lot of the time when I've seen your work hand painted, you haven't interfered too much with the image itself, whereas these works are quite different in that you've actually, in some cases with the swan work, you've sort of framed it as well as disrupting the image itself. And I just wanted to ask what the choices were in terms of what you were blocking out. You sort of touched on it earlier.
Yeah, so it was really a conceptual choice before it was like a practical choice. And it was tying back into that idea of memory and that you remember little bits and things are blocked out and things are, you know, covered up for whatever reason or revealed for whatever reason. And playing with that idea is the reason why I didn't just colour them. I blocked bits out with paint. And then throughout the process, they started off as just coloured prints, and then throughout the 12 months of working on them, they got more and more and more blocked out until you get to the Sunbake one over here, which is much more of a painting than it is a photograph.
Definitely.
And that was sort of the culmination of the entire concept. It's like the
that's the work that you see as the
that's the one that really epitomizes the concept.
Yeah, I can see that.
And that's one of the oldest negatives.
Yeah.
And one of the oldest images in the show.
Yeah. And a very personal one for you.
Very personal. Yeah.
I think you know, this is an idea that you've sort of played with a lot in your practice. Is I think I might be paraphrasing from your PhD, but you have
paraphrase away, it was long.
It was. I didn't read the whole thing. But this idea of photography being seen as sort of the highest of the mimetic arts, which, you know, in terms of it sort of mimicking life. And, you know, often we as viewers tend to look at a photograph as a quite a literal, objective recording.
People call it truth. You know,
pardon?
People call it the truth. Like
the truth,
it's believed in court as, you know...
Yeah, it's evidence.
It's evidence.
Yeah.
But it's not.
Yeah.
Like, if you learn anything about photography, and it's something I always tell anyone that I teach photography to, is that, like, the camera you use, the lens you use, the light that you choose, whether it be natural light from the sun or a flash or this or that or whatever.
The mood you're in.
It all alters the frame that you choose. You know, the section of the world that you frame, like, none of it is true. It's like, and the most simple one is like, I show this, I took these portraits on 10 different lenses. Same person. None of them look the same. The person looks like, not quite a different person, but, you know, if you go from the wide angle lens all the way to the telephoto lens, you get this distorted face all the way to a regular face and then distorts in narrower. Like, there's no real objective truth. You know, we could talk forever about what objective truth is. Let's just ignore that. But there's no real objective truth in a photograph. And playing with that idea and just going, well, let's not even worry about the truth in these images. Let's get them on a much more emotional level.
Your emotional truth.
Yes, rather than a visual truth.
Yeah. And that emotional.
But even truth, it's not. It's just, can we get an emotion out of it? Because I also love the idea of ambiguity and not sort of the incorrect interpretation of ambiguity where something's confusing. It should be something that's understood, but it's understood by everyone differently, and it's also understood by you differently depending on the attitude you're in when you view it. So viewing something, you know, 5 years ago to now, and then 5 years in the future, all three viewings should give you a different response. And that's a truly ambiguous image, which is very hard to achieve. But it, you know, shoot for the stars, right?
Yeah, totally. It's I guess it's similar in a way to you know, perhaps being a bit younger and seeing a work of art that is just so influential on you, and your memory of your experience of viewing that work. You know, perhaps it had a really pivotal impact on you in that time. Maybe you view it years later and you think, it's okay. Or you think, wow, this is even better than I remember it. Are there any works of art that you have that power for you?
I mean...
Any life-changing museum experiences?
Nothing life-altering, but it's also that sort of thing when you go into a museum as an artist and you're looking around the edge of the... going, how they do that, I really want to kind of achieve that. Rather than, you know, coming in open and trying to get that emotional response. And I guess that's the sort of curse of making art. You kind of... you're a bit jaded when you look at other people's work.
That's true. Well, who then who are some artists that have sort of influenced you at, whatever stage of your art making?
The
practice?
one that's influenced me continually for years is Bruno V. Roles, the Belgian photographer, or say artist rather than photographer. And the reason I started making marks within the photograph was looking at his works where he will screen print over photographs, draw in with graphite pencil, and paint in with watercolors. He didn't use oil though, so. But just looking at what he does, and his subject matter is completely removed from what I do. It's all based around paradise and this idealization of paradise, and he uses the palm tree as a motif for that. I know you're a big fan anyway. Yeah.
I just want to interject. So I also am an artist who works with photography, and James and I have collaborated on quite a few things and shared dark rooms and all this kind of thing. And Bruno Roles, he was a very influential artist for me as well. But I really took the subject matter that he was dealing, and he uses a lot of the time the symbolism of the palm tree, which is like a pretty ancient symbolic thing throughout art, throughout religion for like thousands of years, quite literally. And I really took that symbolism for me, and also just the sculptural form. And I did play with methods of abstraction in the darkroom with those, but I didn't sort of have the same impact. So we did both look at the same artist and get a really ambiguous, in your definition of the word.
It's not my definition, it's a dictionary
definition. Not confusing is what I meant to say. But so we did, it does speak to that subjectivity of the image and what other things are behind it. And it can have these really literal completely different experienes for everyone. Yeah.
And it's funny when you mention what's, the work that's influenced me the most, and I straight go into technique over actually what he's trying to say with his work.
Yeah. But I mean, I think that speaks to your practice as well. Like, I think there is so much experimentation with technique in your work that it would be ridiculous, frankly, if you didn't mention it.
Yeah. And actually, coming back to this body of work, it's something that's been really nice about this, because only a few of the images I shot and developed while I was making the body of work, but having them there and taking a very unphotographic approach and taking much more of a studio-based, like a studio artist-based approach to them, where I'm living with them on the walls and working on them over time. That was quite nice, because I could focus on the painting technique rather than having to worry about the images.
Yeah.
Unlike the body work that I've been doing for 3 years now, and I've got two more years, I say years, 2 more springs. It's documenting spring in the Kosciuszko. Yeah. Whereas that I'm constantly thinking about, well, I've got these images, what are the elements of the landscape do I want to focus on? And then eventually getting into the studio with it. Whereas these, it was just like almost purely a studio practice. And like the idea of materiality in my work has always been huge, because photography being such a flat surfaced, two-dimensional image-based medium, I was sort of like, well, the material holds a lot of ideas and a lot of concepts and a lot of feeling. So this body of work, I could really focus on that materiality of the work, because the images have been done for years. They've been there waiting. So that was really nice too. Yeah.
You mentioned earlier that some of the works that you'd actually staged to recreate memories. Any little hints as to no? It's worth a shot.
No. I like the mystery there.
Yeah, I respect that.
Got to keep some secrets.
Yeah, definitely. Do you see then now? So you mentioned you've been working on a series of images documenting the Snowy River Kosciuszko area for a number of years now. Do you see this approach that you've taken bleeding into that at all, or?
Yes and no. I mean, it inevitably will. There's no way it won't. But because some of the works I made 3 years ago, I still have to keep that aesthetic with those works. So they're still very much paper-based works. Yeah. However, I was just in Japan recently, and I've been to Japan 3 times, and I absolutely love it. And I shot a bunch of film there in January. And as soon as this body of work was up, I started playing with those negatives, and that body of work will be heavily influenced by the processes in this. But the older one, I kind of want them to be, but then I'd have to scrap all the work I've already done. I don't want it to be too separate.
Yeah, fair enough. Yeah. So and that trip to Japan was a personal trip as well. So
it was my brother's 30th. So
So you'll be sort of exploring the same sort of notions with this. Yeah.
Kind of, but not, because a lot of the time I spent alone because like I flew over there with family. They all went off. My brother went snowboarding. My mom and my sister went off to Hiroshima, and I spent a lot of time alone before I met them all to go snowboarding. So it was really like, and because I'd been there before and felt like I'd missed things that I wanted to have images of, it was really like this journey to capture the things that on the last 2 trips, because I was a lot younger. I mean, I was in my early 20s the first few times. And really just focused on bars and snowboarding. But there were a lot of images that I had in my head that I just had to capture. A lot of food-based things, some snow-based things, and a bit more street photographer. I mean, I'm a very poor street photographer, but I gave it my best shot.
Yeah.
But yeah, a lot more figures too, because usually I've been quite landscape-based. And this freed me to be like, no, I can include the figure.
Yeah.
Don't shy away from it, which I had done a lot in the past.
Yeah, no, that's a good... Yeah, I haven't seen any figurative works that you've made for a long time, ever. Yeah, I was trying to think.
I did one portraiture series when I was in uni.
Yeah.
And never did it again.
Yeah.
So that was another thing that was beautiful about this work, is that, I didn't shy away from the figure and really explored that idea. And there's a very obvious sort of link to Baldassare with the blocking out of the personality of the figure, because I wanted to take away the identity and the personality, so it's no longer about the individual that's in the image. It's really about the viewer's connection to the scene. And
the viewer is perhaps in a better position to be able to place it within their own
project
memory.
Upon it.
Yes.
Yeah. I want that. I don't want it like, I really don't like art that dictates to the viewer exactly what to think. It's like, no. Allow them to come to their own conclusions. What I think doesn't matter. Once it's on the wall, who cares about my idea?
Well, that's
you come to it.
That's half of the artwork, really, you know. And I think a lot of the time, you know, when I've been working in galleries, people will come in and they might not understand something, and they might really want to be to have an artwork explained to them, and it is that second half of like the life of the artwork. You know, there's the time spent making it, but then really most of its lifetime is in how other people experience it. And,
exactly.
Yeah.
I mean, I think that's the most important, but the whole reason is for people to view it and experience it. You don't make it to hide it in a cupboard.
No.
I mean, some works, but... but, yeah, I mean, really considering that viewer's experience, I think, ties back to the idea of ambiguity, and the reason I sort of strive for that is purely for the viewer's experience and for them to be able to have their own connection to it. And that's what I kind of hope with this bodywork, because it's so based in my memory. Hopefully there are things that people will connect to with their childhood or with their young adulthood or wherever it is that they've had, you know, memories that are similar to this. I really want that sort of connection.
I think for me, it's really successfully realized in the images of food and drink. You know, there are these things that we all experience, of course, and they're also like human sort of ritualistic they have those sorts of connotations. So for me, I look at the image on the back wall whose title escapes me with the scrolls. Yeah,
it's called scrolls. Yeah.
Amazing. So the scrolls image, which is depicts someone holding a tray of baked cinnamon scrolls, and the scrolls have just got this beautiful, really rich red texture of them. That to me, like I saw that, and your heart just goes like, I remember being a kid and scrolls and yeah.
And I really wanted that. The reason I choose that red too was like the warmth of them coming out of the oven, and then
it's a very strong red.
Yeah. But also that idea that you have in more commercial pursuits where they use red to incite hunger. So they use it in a lot of fast food places, and they use the color red because it makes you hungrier.
Yeah.
So it was those ideas, the idea of warmth, the idea of hunger, my memory of it, like they hadn't gone in the oven yet, which is ironic that I made them warm. They're pre-cooked.
Right.
But like I just liked playing with that idea with the food, and it was part of the reason when I was in Japan I photographed so much food. Like, I think I have like 3 rolls of food and like 1 roll of something else.
Yeah, it's interesting, that psychology of colors as well, what you were saying about fast food chains using red a lot because it creates a sense of urgency and hunger. Yeah. And I think I've read the same about something similar about orange, is that it's one of the most uncomfortable colors to have in a waiting room.
It's also used as like a warning sign.
Yeah,
and like
a beacon.
And it's that was actually quite fun using orange because it's such an abrasive color. It also reminds you of like a bad 70s home.
Yeah, I love it. I love the orange. For me, particularly, I think my favourite work in this exhibition is swans, just over here. And to me, that little pop of orange just completely seals the deal. And it does inject that fun element into it as well.
Yeah. And that's sort of what I wanted in it. But I like there's so many different things. Like, again, when I was saying I'm living within the studio, there's that fun, but then it's also toxic, but then it's warm, but then it's like uninviting. Like it changes as you view it, and depending on what mood you're in, depending if it's the morning or the evening, or if you've had a coffee or not.
I used to really not like the colour orange, and what really warmed me to it was the shipping beacons on Newcastle Harbour, which, we discussed.
Well, that was the stuff we were working on together, which is why I started using the orange.
Yeah, we haven't done that yet.
we started, but it didn't.
We'll get there.
Yeah. But then I had the tube of paint, so I was like,
I've still got so much of it. Yeah, no, it's great. I think it would be good to talk about maybe a particular work. I think what I've noticed since the exhibition's been on is that the goat painting that you're actually sitting in front of, sorry, camera, I think is the one that draws perhaps nearly the most commentary and maybe confusion. And I just wanted to sort of ask you, why the choice to combine these two images. Okay. It's made up of, there's a goat on one side, we've got the telegraph poles with the bird nest on the other side, and a lot of negative space and, a lot of blocking out of colours as well. So maybe if we could just
I'll start with the negative space because that's the easy one. All the use of white is to reference when you print a photograph in the darkroom that you do have, white paper left over. So that's a reference to photography. Other than that, that's really its purpose, is to reference, like, when you are making a print, you leave space and usually trim it off, but I didn't. But the goat itself, so that is an image that I've printed I don't know how many times. So that goat was at the end of my street that I lived in. I don't live there anymore.
In Maryville?
In Maryville, yes. It was a suburban goat.
Okay.
He used to jump on everyone's cars, so you knew not to park near that house. But his owner...
Are you serious?
Yeah.
I never heard you mention it. Okay, sorry. Continue.
This greened out car here was the owner's car. It had hoof dents all over the hood. But the owner himself was quite a straggly guy with a big goatee, like a long goatee. And he was always drinking a glass of red wine. Like, I'm talking like a cup, not a nice wine glass.
A pint of wine.
A pint of wine. And he would sit with his goat on the grass drinking his wine while the goat just ate the grass around him. So I'd photographed it a bunch and printed it a bunch, and it was something that was very sort of personal to me, but I never thought, I was like, I'm not going to exhibit a photo of a goat.
And here we are.
Here we are. And then one of my friends really wanted a print of the goat. So I made a print of the goat for him, and he was like, you have to use that in an artwork. And I was like, I cannot figure out how to use it in an artwork. And then I had this photo of the eagle's nest with the little eagle here.
Oh, I didn't know this.
Yeah, that's an eagle's nest.
Yeah.
And when I had the images just coincidentally on the wall of the studio together, it reminded me of that scene from Jurassic Park where they drop the goat into the raptor's cage and it gets devoured.
Yeah.
So that was purely the reason that I connected these two together.
Yeah.
Was it made me giggle.
Yeah.
Okay, I finally found a way I can use this bloody goat. That was one of the older images. That's probably 7 or 8 years old. And after all that time of thinking about it, I was like, I have a way that I can use this goat.
So no deep goat eagle symbolism, Jurassic Park.
Purely
and weird goat at the end of the strip. Right.
But the thing is, the original print of that goat is still the only print I keep up permanently in the darkroom.
Really?
Yeah.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, it's above the door. So it's like where you'd put like your portrait of Jesus in a Catholic home. I've got the goat.
Definitely no other goat symbolism related
not
to
on purpose.
No, that's great. That's really fun. Is there anything else that you wanted to sort of add before we might go to if anyone has some questions for James? Where do you sort of you talked a little bit about this new body of work that you've just shot in Japan and maybe having a bit of a sort of more personal archival process?
Well, yeah, it wasn't. I didn't shoot it to be a body of work. I shot it purely for the exercise of taking photos. And I do that a lot, where I would just take photos purely just to do it because it's
and for your own memory.
But not even a lot of the film I don't even develop. I just do it.
Yeah.
Because I enjoy the process of it, and it helps me visualize things and think things. And that was sort of the idea of this Japan trip. There's a few portraits here and there of my brother that I was like, okay, well, I'll print them for him.
It's your birthday.
30th. Yeah. Especially when we went out like for dinner on that night and whatever. But then doing this body of work and going, oh no, I can actually just like access it as an archive and conceptualize it through the process of printing it and coloring it and making it. Who knows if it actually turns into a body of work? Because I find that like when I finish something, I'll work on something straight away, and it's usually like a bridge to the next actual body of work. So we'll see. Maybe it becomes something. Yeah. Maybe it doesn't. Maybe it's the kind of works that I said earlier that I just put back in a drawer and
and come back to 8 years later maybe with a totally new kind of. Do you think that it will change that like the archival that sort of process? Do you think you'd do that more?
I think at the moment I'm really enjoying doing that. But I work so constantly that like I work through so many ideas that don't see the light of day. Like I'm quite obsessive with my making. Yeah.
You make a lot of work.
I can't. I physically like I cannot go a week without making something, and if I do, I become very grumpy and irritable. And my partner Jerry, she will just send me to the studio and be like, James, you were being a pain.
Get out.
Go make something.
Oh, great.
And I really take that like growing up skateboarding, like all you're thinking about is like getting out there and learning something and that growth and like falling and getting up and falling and getting up and learning something. And then after a bunch of injuries where I can't do that anymore, I've taken that attitude to my art making of just like, it doesn't matter if it doesn't work, just make. Because, you make 100 works, one of them is probably worth, showing people.
Yeah, exactly. Oh, great. That was great. I enjoyed hearing a bit more about this body of work. Does anyone in the audience have some questions that they wanted to ask James at all?
James?
Yes.
Apart from the white space that you referenced to the printmaking process, the project, what caught my interest was, and curiosity, was the halo, whatever you want to call it, around what I presumed at first was your way of directing our attention to the positive space, the signs and dish, the goat. Except in the goat one, I realised that it's in the negative space as well.
Yes.
But predominantly it's in the... So could you elaborate or talk to us about what that means to you and what your intention was for those?
Well, yeah, so my intention was, again, it's a reference to like a technical aspect of photography where you don't get it so much in modern lenses these days because they're made so well. But in a lot of old lenses, one of the hardest things for them to overcome was the vignetting and that graying around the edge. But what's beautiful about that is that it does, as you said, draw your attention to what's in the center of the frame. So it was very much sort of just a reference to that originally, and then aesthetically, I quite liked that it drew this attention and that I could sort of play with filling in that negative space. I don't think I have much of a sort of emotional or I guess it is conceptual, but not really. That's not really an emotional thing for me. It was much more like putting in these little Easter eggs that reference photography, even though they're painted.
Yeah. Anyone else? Right?
I would say lovely conversation. Thank you, Dave.
Thank you.
Thanks.
I just want to point out the thing about the fun thing. Coming from someone who done a PhD as well, knowing that you're a conceptual thinker and very methodical thinker about your work and so on, isn't it freeing?
Oh, it's...
And doesn't your work develop so much better if you're having fun with it?
It's obviously the only body of work. Usually when I put a body of work up, by the time it's in the gallery, I hate it. I don't hate this one. because it was fun. And I agree with you. It's that freeing and like, there's this sort of weight off my chest with this body of work that I can have fun and make stuff and not be self-conscious about it. Yeah. And that I was self-conscious about it for a long time. So it's quite nice.
A sort of unlearning in a way that like more academic approach where you're conceptualizing things before. And definitely.
And that's it. And that's the beauty of spending time in the studio with it is you're not reading books. I'm just there looking at it and going, what should I do next?
Yeah.
Isn't it sort of like coming back to that, if you use the word fun, I'd rather use the word playful.
That works too, yeah.
I always say, in my I say, no F word, please. It has so many connotations.
It does have a lot of connotations. It's almost unserious, like...
It takes the enthusiastic sort of engaging,
Play.
Playful.
Yeah.
And I think play is probably a more apt sort of word for it because it really is like when you get in there and you maybe have one too many coffees and then you just go...
What you say is so spot on, that thing, just getting in there and making like a kid's, understand people get cars or dolls or figures or whatever it is, and just doing stuff. Without thinking it has to be something. It will always become something if you let it.
If you just, trust the process. Which is something I'd never... I mean, I'd always said it, but I don't think I truly accepted that.
There's always a bit of distrust in the process.
One wise creative once said when they were asked, do you have any advice for my youthful making? And he said, just keep making it and keep moving forward.
Yeah. That's it. Just make it for the fact of making it.
Anyway, so great job.
Thank you very much.
Hi James, I'm a freshman. So you say that the work is like a collection of recollections.
Yes.
Right. So are there any recollections that in the room that belong to other recollections? So like, did you make one work and then make another work?
Oh, to connect.
That one?
Oh.
Yeah. Like
Not
to
consciously.
consciously
Not consciously, but
sort of make you think, oh, now that sparked another memory now. Oh,
I mean,
yeah.
looking around the room, yes.
Yeah.
But this is the first time I've thought about
reflection.
that.
One thing sparked another thing, and
Well, that's sort of constantly happening for me in the studio, especially when you do something that is, quote unquote, successful. That kind of sparks on you moving on to the next work. But image-wise, not consciously. Technique-wise, yes.
Yeah.
But I think I got to think about this. But yes, the answer is yes, but I can't elaborate yet.
So, like, are any of the recollections situated in particular? I mean, obviously, some of them are. You've got the ghost.
Yes and no.
Yeah.
Some of them are,
Yeah.
and some of them are years apart but put together.
Yeah. Right. So they're like a collage.
Emotionally, they're the same, but
Yeah.
physically, some of them that I've put together are in different countries.
Right. Okay.
But you couldn't tell.
No. Right. And is that purposeful?
That was purposeful.
You
Yeah.
can't tell?
I like
Right.
having, a little trick in there. Like,
A little secret that
a
only
little
you
secret
know.
that I know that, maybe when I die, some academic will figure it out.
So you said about the goat being like a recurring image that sticks in your head. Are there sort of like little symbols or things like that will reappear in this work or in other works? Do you think you'll take some of that into your next work?
Yes. Whether or not they leave the studio or not is another question. But yes, I will look at images and I get quite obsessed. So if I'm working with something in a landscape, I get quite obsessed with printing landscape stuff for a month or two. And then with this one, because I could, focus on the figure, I got quite obsessed of going through my archive and finding all my images with the figure in it and seeing what can I do with this? So yes, if you see it or not, that's, maybe not, but I will do it.
So there's obviously an element of surprise as well. It's like when you come out of a very technical process and then you're then going into a studio-based technical process where you're printing onto the board, then it allows you to experiment, as you said, because then you can wipe off and then you can repaint.
Yes.
So it allows for accidents and things to happen that you can either wipe out or you can leave, or you can add to.
Exactly.
So is that something that you feel is a very important part of this work?
Definitely.
Yeah.
Definitely. The working and reworking. I mean, even going back to the original way that I coloured stuff on paper, I call it this to and fro, or the battle between the edge, where to do it is you put a tiny little dot of oil paint, and then I either use a cotton bud or a old cloth, and you thin it out. But through doing that, you're not getting a perfect line. But because it's oil, you can, using one of those soft, squishy sort of erasers for charcoal, you can actually erase on the paper and rub the oil off. And it's this, say there's especially with landscape, say there's the edge of the landscape there and the sky here. The sky and the landscape are overlapping slowly, and then balancing.
So you're controlling those techniques as well?
Yes, and that will always be there of that, just toing and froing and erasing and re-putting the colour on and erasing and putting the colour on until it balances. And it may not be a perfect edge, but until I find that, it's okay. I can live with that. I like it.
Yeah. And then it's when to stop.
Yes, knowing when to stop. Yeah.
The beauty of photography is I'll just reprint it, I'll do it again.
Yeah. I love that about the battle for the edge. Did you have a question, Nicole?
You say this is about your youth, but I don't see any skateboards.
No, I keep that life separate from my artworks. It's too hard because the reason I got into photography originally was photographing skateboarding, but it's such a different process to any other type of photography. And it's also such the community of skateboarding photography is so harsh Like, it's unbelievably
It's its own
critical.
little
It's its own
subset,
little
yeah.
microcosm, and like,
Well, it's a subculture.
it's a subculture, and there are certain things you can and can't do, and so including it would. It wouldn't work in my head because, like, to do it, it'd be a commercial-looking photograph to get it right, according to the subculture. Pardon? It'd be sacrilegious, exactly, yeah. And all my skateboarding friends would hate it, so.
Oh, great.
Yeah.
This sort of looks like Father Christmas.
Yes?
Is there a play on that, or?
Not intentionally, but there's the ambiguity in the image, so.
The ambiguity lives on. Yeah.
It was meant to be that feeling of cold water on sunburnt skin.
Yeah.
And that's why that cool blue on the harsh red.
Yeah, as someone who gets sunburnt at least once every summer, I really felt that aspect of it.
I can see Santa now.
Yeah.
Great.
There's no presents or fuzzy hat.
Yeah. We might wrap that up there. Thanks so much for joining us, everyone. And if you haven't yet had a chance to look around the room, I encourage you to do so and spend a bit of time with the artworks. It is the last day that this exhibition is open.
Last few hours.
Last hour, maybe?
Yeah.
10 minutes or so? No, I'm joking. You can spend as much time as you want. And yeah, any sales inquiries, feel free to come up to me or Justin. The works will be in our stock room for a little while as well after the show closes.
And if there are any questions you didn't feel comfortable asking,
oh yes, please.
I'll be here.
Yeah. Please feel free to mill.
Yeah.
Okay, great. Thanks.
Beautiful. Thank you.
Thanks so
Thank you
much.
for coming.
Thank you. Mic's off.
Yeah. You don't want to hear what I have to say next.
Yeah.